Welcome to another video featuring a themed collection of prints put together by the Variable Area Arts Association. My name is Nick Rose, and to me, one of the greatest things about Egyptian art that we'll show you today, and just about all Egyptian art, is that we were never meant to see it. And still, this mask of Tutankhamun from about 1327 BC is one of the best known pieces of artwork in the world. As far as we can tell, all the ancient Egyptian art was created for functional purposes and not artistic expression. The ancient Egyptian language didn't even have a word for art. Later, the Greeks and Romans created art for art's sake, but there's no evidence that we can find that the Egyptians did this, the ancient Egyptians. That wasn't really the purpose of the ancient Egyptian arts. So they would really have no idea why we're doing this video today or why their artifacts are on display in museums around the world. Things we consider art today are the everyday items of the wealthiest Egyptians. Coffins, statues, amulets, tombstones, things like that. It's hard to think of these golden sandals and toe stalls as everyday items, but they were an everyday item for King Thutmose's wife around 1450 BCE. Lots of times in the basements of museums that show this rich people stuff upstairs, they have lots of the same things of poor people downstairs in the basement, but they hardly ever show them because these items don't match our modern sensibility of aesthetics. They're not as showy. Poor people's shoes wouldn't look anything like these golden sandals and toe stalls. This broad collar of Ascended Tisi is from the Middle Kingdom dynasty about 1810 BCE. So as is often the case with ancient and classic art, it tells the story of a relatively few wealthy and powerful people without giving much insight into the lives of the masses of people who lived at the time. Most of the creations in ancient Egypt served a religious purpose, like the statue of Egyptian priestess Takushit, circa 1680 BCE. The Egyptians valued exact representations rather than beauty. There was no poetic license. They wanted something to look just as it looked in real life. The ancient Egyptians often had vertical and horizontal reference lines in their works, so they were sure they maintained the correct proportions, like in this chronicle of the Battle of Cadiz. So the motivation to create in ancient Egypt seems based on a practical goal rather than creating beauty. It's not that the ancient Egyptians didn't know what beauty was. Even their hieroglyphics are beautiful, as you can see here in these Atef crown hieroglyphics from the pre-dynastic period. The four feathers in the crown represent truth, justice, morality, and balance. So there was an appreciation of beauty, but it was always part of something functional. So a mural in a tomb might show scenes from the deceased life, so it would be remembered by the spirit, as in this piece from the tomb of Amenhotep of the New Kingdom. Charms and amulets might protect one from harm. Small statues might ward off evil spirits. Decorated mirrors, handles, and cabinets all serve practical purposes, as did ceramic creations used for eating, drinking, and storage. This is the pectoral of Senusret II, who ruled from 1897 to 1878 BCE. The ancient Egyptian pectorals were forms of jewelry that were often worn as necklaces across the chest. Some critics diss Egyptian art as unrefined. They say there's no perspective, no light and shadow. Everything is two-dimensional, blah, 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 blah. But I stick up for the Egyptian art because that's some of the same things that people say about my own art. But more importantly, I think the critics are missing that beauty is often there in simplicity. And it's possible the Egyptians understood that emotional expressions were temporary. So they did often paint people emotionless with their faces. Their creations were meant to last for all eternity, and since emotions were more temporary, most of the time there's not emotion on the person's face. It might even have been that they believed the spirit world wouldn't recognize a smiling or frowning face for sure, so they put the face right in the middle, so they'd have a sure safe passage to the afterlife. As in this mural of King Tutankhamun on his throne and his wife Ankhesenamum from around 1327 BC. So I say phooey on the critics. Egyptian art, whether it was a part of a painting, a statue, a cosmetic case, an amulet, a cabinet, whatever, it was meant to tell a story. And looking at it that way, it's been an amazing success for the past 5,000 years. And the art is still telling stories. For example, this bust of Nefertiti has been telling the story of feminine beauty since it was first created around 1345 BCE and rediscovered in 1912 in the ruins of Armana. This video has just scratched the surface of a few of the many stories yet unheard that ancient Egyptian art has kept alive. Thanks for being with us today.